Bula everyone. Back na siya mamay. Bula me New Zealand, me Australia, bula me Amerika, bula me Namoamua, back na siya mamay. Bula me Makoi, me Lambasa, bunong Balabu, nakabali na siya mamay, bikamdoe Visari, bula me naka Namoamua, bula na tako na labo. Okay, vinaka vakalevu na mata serengona cripple serenaders and rotolanga titikuna serengona au sokota vakeani. Na turanga evola nanganga ni serengo o Solomoni vosaidake maro tiko ni rto sama tiko mana bubale na vosaidake na non rto o maro takatiko na nona vola na sere nanganga ni serengo na turanga taman rto. Baka vinaka na bubale na vosaidake na non rto dau e na vuku ni Serua e tanto tali takatiko na vakarongoda e na vulongo na vula I balolo lelai e na vula ko tova ni kona sina tu city e kani marau ni daro ni da siama yani na nomuni lomoni vale na kabina kan sikini ko me vakani siang so chini do le berdo na makare sina tu city e me vakani vulongo na vula ke Namosi na vula o kotova kerona numa kina me rasureti manda e so na wekanda rando vakavaka na vunua na vakaturango Namosi e na vuku ni talendi ke na nonra kilaka era vakayanga taka e na vuku ni vanua vakaturango Namosi vakatulo sakatiko e na vendel ni avutambu e na vanua vakaturango Namosi ni taka ni rongo binaka tukani na beo libo ni pe Talanoa e na kai binaka ni kua numbula nako na takona lavo o wakatulo talatik ngai na be del ni avutambu e na woni tin katolu na be sane viti binaka vakalevu na do toko na tikumai na I vata vatango e na be madhawa marutaki ni vungara do tali taksar vakalevu na vakarorongo mai e na be mo ni madhawa e ni kua tiko bat ke kende do na nondo bulang o Marita Manley e marama ni welesi una suriti koe manda me na vakambula manda vikenda e na kabini ko mbuli vinaka Marita naka vakalevu na yado mai e na vata vatango ke rani o vakambula manda virna vakaroro.
Ula vinaka Dr. T, naka kalevu na vesureti Talanoa vatukika mongini kua na yadango Marita o ya mai welesi o ya usa yada mai viti na 2006 vatake nawa tingu. And that's about, unfortunately, the limit of my Fijian. I do speak a little bit more, but I'm really embarrassed that after 15 years and a few lessons with you, which I was hopeless at, that I'm still not very fluent.
Naka vakalevu na mai. O via vambula talinga vakuwilis?
Io. Hello pau, penuiti Marita, tuinta to Gymru. Dwi byw in Fiji ers 2006. Nes I symud I Fiji nes I symud I Fiji gyda fy ngŵr, enw I Matthew, o Matthew, see, I'm mixing up my Fijian and my Welsh here. Matthew, my husband, is from England. And we moved here, the both of us, in 2006. But yeah, my Welsh is also very rusty these days. So I'm originally from Wales. I was educated in Welsh. So until the age of 18, all my schooling was in Welsh. But I left Wales when I was 18, moved to England for a few years for work, and then moved to Fiji. So I've actually lived in Fiji longer than I've lived in England, and almost as long as I've lived in Wales, which is really strange when I think about it.
Wow.
But definitely my adopted home.
That is so nice to hear. And how have the life in Fiji been like for both of you, for you and Matthew?
Oh, we absolutely love Fiji. Fiji has been incredibly amazing for both of us, and we wouldn't want to be, anywhere else. Although I hope nobody from Wales is listening at the moment. And I think for us, and we'll talk a little bit about Talanoa treks, but also the events that we've done in Namosi. I think one of the really powerful things for us still is compared to where we left. We were working in London before we moved to Fiji, and I think one of the things that always strikes us, every time we interact with anyone pretty much in Fiji, is that we are still really reminded of the fact that many of our friends and the communities that we work with just have values that are the right way round. And so much of the world, unfortunately, seems to have strayed, from that path. And I always remember, Gareth Baber always used to talk about when he was here, some of the similarities, between Wales and Fiji, and community, family, church, being such an important aspects of family life in both Wales and in Fiji. One of the things that makes me laugh every time I go home is people will say, what is it that you love about Fiji? And I'll talk about kind of some of these things, and they'll be like, but I grew up in a very small town in an agricultural area, and they'll look at me and go, but you had that, Marita, and you left when you were 18. We have that too. So there are some cultural similarities, but definitely when I moved to London, I was just lost, like it was not where I wanted to be. And after 3-4 years of being elbowed, on the morning commute every day and watching grown men try and fight each other for the last seat on the train, I was just like, this is not what life is supposed to be like.
Wow, that's a huge contrast, Contrast from your upbringing, and then coming to a big city, and then coming over to Fiji. So and when you arrived in Fiji, would you like to talk a little bit as to what motivated you and Matthew to move towards the creation of Talanoa Treks and Talanoa Consulting, which is amazing, things that involve the environment. So I'll let you explain. I know you have a little script in Fijian that you want to share too before you go to the deeper one. Go for it.
Ayaw sa tovalea.
Tovalea, go for it, Naka.
So kei rau sa talita kinatang balik, enangaw na kei rau sa yada mai suva, o au tarongi vatake nongo i tokani mai suva i veina vanua vinakadaka i Taumvale. So ni oti ke rau salasu tale mai Taumvale Tomanivi, Vatilamu, Lavena i Taviuni. E duana songo ni Taumvale Lailai Suva. In 2007, ke rau salaku i Savatu, ke Navatu Sila, ka Taumvale mai na ngatangata i Nubutautau, tiko na koro, Taumvale i Nubutautau i Korlevu le Stali Suva. So vei mo ni madau ambalavu, ke rau sa tuvana duana group mai Suva i Taumvale. And that's about the extent of my ability to do that.
That deserves a clap.
But what was really inspiring for us is that, you know, we've always been hikers. So we've always been outdoors people that, you know, wanted to be in nature. And we weren't actually huge, you know, as much as we love the ocean and love the beach, we weren't really ocean people. And we certainly weren't people that could spend, you know, 3-4 days on a beach. So one of the things that we tried to do when we first arrived was find places to go hiking. And I still really vividly remember the first time we arrived in Nubutauta. We'd made arrangements with the Turanganikoro in advance, who's now the Matinitikina, a really dear friend of ours, Mr. Rokovesi, his Orisi Tumunantakai or Mr. Vilitati Rokovesa. So he goes by 2 different names. We know him as Mr. Rocco, and Mr. Rocco was waiting for us at the gate in Nubutauta with a jug of kumquat juice. And I must have been so unbelievably green at the time, you know, so instructions on how he would present our sevu on our behalf and what we had to do and how we were to wear our sulu and what we had to do when we entered the community hall and where we should enter and, you know, all of the relevant protocols. So for us, that was a really amazing introduction to Fiji culture. And we were, I mean, I was in my late 20s at the time. So I was, yeah, it was all, an incredible experience. And so we would start going up regularly, and we got to know the community in Nubutautau fairly well. And then after we'd been going for probably about 5 or 6 years, so just taking groups from Suva, the Matinitikina asked if we would help the community to try and see if there was a tourism opportunity. So kind of asked us, you know, do we think there would be a tourism opportunity for doing what we were doing as the Suva crowd? And our response was that there was definitely an opportunity, but we were totally not the right people to help. That, you know, we weren't from Fiji, we weren't tourism people, we'd never owned a business. So we tried to connect them to existing tourism operators, and nobody was really interested. So I was fortunate to be working at SBC, the Pacific Community at the time, and my husband had just finished a contract, so I was still working full time, and it gave us the opportunity to say, I guess, well, you know, what's the worst that could happen? We'll take out a small loan, we'll buy a vehicle. If it all goes horribly wrong, we'll sell a vehicle and we'll have lost some money, but I'm sure we'll have learned a lot in the process, and that's the understatement of the century. So the next kind of, I guess, 6 to 12 months were a lot of consultations. So working with and through, we work very closely with Nature Fiji Marangati Biti. And so we work with and through them, with provincial offices. And we had 4 communities that we were working with at the time, across 3 different provinces. So there was a lot of talking to different provincial officers and district officers around some of the consultations to support each community to decide if that was something that they wanted to do, and then to really shape the type of tourism that they wanted to engage in. So we try really hard to make sure each community has its own enterprise. So we take the back seat, we focus on the kind of marketing and the logistics. But when you arrive in the village is hosting you, and all of the guides are from the communities. So the guides that are taking you on the hikes are taking you to where they fish, where they farm, telling you all of the stories along the way. And that's actually where the name Talanoa Treks came from when we were brainstorming names. Mrs. Siwatimbao, who very kindly gave us some feedback on some options, really liked Talanoa Treks because it embodied what we were trying to do, which was to say, yes, this is a trek, this is a tourism experience that you're coming on, but really the Talanoa, the culture, the stories, the sharing of cultural exchanges was as important, if not more so, than the hike. And that's what a lot of guests, that have come with us over the years have also said, in their feedback, that's they were expecting the hike, but they weren't expecting the kind of cultural immersion. And so that always comes as a really, I think, as a really nice surprise often for most guests, is they often say that, they learn more about Fiji in the 4 or 5 days that they come hiking than they do in the rest of their time. People that have been coming for years, potentially. And I still remember taking, when we went down to the Fiji Tourism Expo one year, which is held in Denarau every year. And we had Mr. Rocco and some of the guides from Nabukelevu come down for that expo. And it was the first time they'd been to Denarau. And they kind of looked around Denarau. And I remember one of them saying to me, people really come here for like 7 days and they say they've been to Fiji. I said, yes, they do. So I think it's just such an interesting contrast. And Fiji has a huge diversity in its tourism sector. But I hope that one of the things that the communities and ourselves over the years have tried to do is to give people an experience that is beneficial to the communities, but is also helpful for guests to understand a little bit more about the country.
That is so awesome, especially when it comes to marketing, tourism marketing. I think the work you're doing through Talanoa Treks is giving visitors another option. As we all know, there's a lot of the sun, sand, surf attention on the coastal areas, which you were saying before, the ocean or the beaches. But now with Talanoa Trek, opening up the opportunity up in the, in the Numbutoto area, as you've mentioned there, how has the response for the women like? Because they're the guides would be the men, I would imagine. But what about the women, Marita?
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because that was true in the beginning. So most of our guides were men to start with. But we really try, and the women would largely be employed by the community, by the enterprise. So each community has a tourism committee, which channels kind of all of the arrangements when they have guests. So the women would largely be, responsible for the catering and for hosting and for looking after the accommodation side. But we had quite a big effort with support of Women's Fund Fiji, formerly the Fiji Women's Fund, to look at supporting women who were interested in guiding as well. And we had real success with that. So we had pre-COVID, we had a number of female guides who are guiding regularly. And what was really interesting about that process is with that, we've always tried to ensure that we're supporting the women in the community, but through their community structures. So a lot of that work is, sometimes it can take months, years, to support the women to have those conversations, because we, again, very much, we're outsiders. It's not our place to actively kind of impose our, our views. So we were really clear with the community as to what our views were, which is that, women, if they wanted a guide, should be given the opportunity to do that. And then we had a Fijian facilitator, Duvata come up from Suva, who's a gender specialist, but he's an Itauke man, which really helped. So he helped us with one of the guide trainings where we didn't really talk about the term gender. I think it's always kind of an external term as well. We talked about whether people wanted to guide and what barriers they might face to be able to guide. And I always remember some of the men's groups and the youth group and the women's group. The men had like maybe 3 things that were barriers to them guiding, and the women had about 20 on their list, which was all the things that we know, which is childcare responsibilities, who was going to look after all of their existing obligations if they went to guide for the day. And so what was really great about some of those conversations is then some of the men in the community who wanted to support their wives to guide started to have those conversations about, no, it's okay. If you want to go, then I will, I'll look after the kids, I'll get them fed, I'll put them to bed, etc. So that was great to see. The women still do most of the catering, and we're not open at the moment because of COVID, but they have organized themselves, worked out how they want to do that. They have had conversations with the boss of Akoro about I can remember in one community where the women weren't particularly happy about what the community was paying them for their services in terms of the tourism sector, and it took them a few months, but they gathered themselves to be able to make a case to the boss of Akoro for why they should be paid more, and they did that successfully, and that was done by them. So I think that's the way that we've tried to work, is that it needs to come from within to be sustainable. Otherwise it's just some random external, in our case, external Brits that are coming in and sharing our views of the world, which is not the way it should be. So we've tried to make sure that we're supportive, but that it's the women themselves. If the women want to do something, that it's them themselves that are doing it. So we had another really good project with the Fiji Women's Fund and the German embassy, where we were upgrading kitchens in each of the communities. And what was really funny about that process was, so normally, obviously, it would be usually the men that would be doing any kind of construction and buying all of the materials. So we kind of took the women through a process of them deciding who they wanted to be the carpenters or the builders, and having a contract with that person, but then also coming down to the hardware stores to select all the materials, to be responsible for doing the kind of delivery note, when they came back to the village, to try and really make sure that the kitchens should be designed by women. They're the people who are going to be using the kitchen the most. So that was a really, really interesting process as well, because I remember in one village, the lady who was leading the project wanted to choose a carpenter from outside the village, which didn't go down very well because the carpenters were obviously being paid. So that didn't go down very well with the men in the community until they saw the building start to go up, because she'd seen his work in a neighboring community, and she was like, no, I know this person can do a really, really good job. So I think as soon as the men started to see the building go up, they kind of backed off a little bit and said, okay, fair enough. So that was a really interesting process as well. So
it's really nice. I always enjoy looking at the pictures that are taken, also the women with the training. I think I saw pictures of them with food preparation, or learning how to readapt the food that they serve, but in a more kind of a presentation or the type of food that is presented, but also shared with the visitors that are coming in. So it's kind of nice to see the ability for them, one, to be empowered as women, and number two is for them to restructure or kind of change their perspective to make sure that it meets the needs of the visitors. It's kind of like everybody meets in the middle. It's really nice.
Yeah, totally. And it was really fun. We brought some of the ladies down to Nandi once as part of that food hygiene training. And we were, very thankful to some of the places that we visited that opened up their kitchens, to the ladies to go and see a, professional kitchen and a restaurant. But what was really great is we'd picked places that did really good Fiji fusion food. And so I can remember the ladies talking afterwards going, I didn't realize we were going to be coming down to Nandi and eating roro and, ika vakalolo and, it's like, yes, like and part of that is also, that process was about giving them confidence in their own food. And I think that's one of the things that's been really detrimental in terms of, well, both in the mainstream tourism sector, but also in just our diets in general in Suva, that often and it's changing. I think it is changing. Like, it's really interesting to see that shift now, but that kind of realization that in rural communities, like, traditional diets are way, way, way healthier, obviously, than the processed stuff that many people eat in urban areas. And so giving people that confidence that, we had to really explain that if people were coming to the interior, they wanted to eat the food that is from, that area. And one of the really interesting things with the women particularly was saying, look, if for breakfast, if you want to, along with the bamba cow, it's okay to just go and collect some bananas or guavas and, put them out, because for most of the visitors that are coming, they have they've never potentially had in their lives something that was picked that morning that is then being eaten, an hour later. But a lot of the women were scared that wasn't demonstrating enough of an effort for their guests, So we really had to help them kind of through that process of saying, no, it's okay. Like, it's fine just to serve, fresh food. You don't always have to get up at, 5 a.m. to start cooking scones or bamba cow or whatever it might be. Because they really wanted to, demonstrate that they had put that effort in. And then the other thing we had to kind of talk about, I guess, really early on was that issue of, for visitors, because they want to eat the food from the area, that meant not serving, crackers, tuna, any of the things that often rural communities wanted to serve to guests, because they wanted to demonstrate that it was bought, there was bought food as well. So kind of really interesting conversations around trying to explain why that, as much as that's really hospitable and we appreciate it, that's not what guests necessarily, the guests are coming to be hosted by them, and in a way that, that they want to eat food from the area, etc., etc.
That's a huge shift, the shift of their perspective. And I really like when you bring them over to Nandi or bring them down to the urban area just for exposure. But I think one is exposure, but the other two, the other point as well is the affirmation for themselves to appreciate that roro is still the number one, right? Food, or the ndalo, the mboka, or the ota, the prawns. They
have wild yams, they have all these amazing stuff.
Because that is why, I know we've, you go up to Numbutau and the others, the islands up or the villages further up, but there's so much similarity, with Namosi and Netasiri and the interior of Navosa. And I know there are some of our listeners logging in from these provinces. So the Dolomina, we came down to Navosa, Nandronga, Ra, Mba, all the interior, Namosi Netasiri, the richness, of their environment. It's just, it's just amazing and out of this world. Because I'm from Kandavo and I'm from the outer islands, but when I go up into the mountains, it's just like another planet. It's just so much beauty. And it's so funny to Marita, when I talk about Namosi from an outsider's perspective, Kali, my husband, often laugh at me, to tell me like, what are you saying, Teresi? It seems like because he grew up there and he lived there, he doesn't see the way I see it, because I'm not tired of taking photos, Marita, of that place.
Yes, I know. I see them all the time. But it's the same with me in Wales, when I sometimes see, visitors that go to Snowdonia, which is just my backyard, in terms of the hills and the mountains that I grew up in. And you would see these, Americans or whoever posting these amazing photos. And I'd be like, oh, yeah, I feel really bad now because I don't think I truly appreciated its beauty, while I was there. And I do now when I go home. But it's sometimes it helps to have that slight distance or different perspective.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, so when you leave the place and then you come back, you have a more appreciation. Yeah, so or not taking things for granted. So that's wonderful. Yeah, and Vinaka, now I want to go up there when I come over to Fiji. So I'll keep you posted. Now that we're going to go into the topic of the marathon, and I know both you and Matthew, and you have a wonderful team in the Suva Marathon Club that does a lot of this awesome program for running and doing all the work that you're doing. Can you just explain a little bit more how your work was like in Suva Marathon and how it linked to the Namosi Marathon?
Yeah, of course. So the Suva Marathon Club's been going since 2014, so not that long. And it was really set up to try and support people, to get active. Got a huge problem with NCDs. So, one of the things that we try and do is just encourage people, if they've never run before, that's okay. If you want to come and walk, that's okay. Like this. But running is one of those things that you can essentially do with, very little cash, because all you really need is a pair of shoes, and as the Namosi runners showed us, you don't necessarily even need those. So one of the things that last year, as a result of COVID, because we couldn't hold events in Suva for about 4 or 5 months, we generally hold once a month, we hold a social run on a Saturday, and then we do 2 or 3 events, which includes the Suva Marathon, usually in July. And because I think it wasn't until August last year that things really opened up, those of us that had been, stuck in Suva for 4 or 5 months were like, well, we don't want to be doing this in Suva. Let's go somewhere else and let's do something a little bit more adventurous. So, we love the interior, and we were pretty sure that we would be able to get, because Namosi is close enough to Suva, that we would be able to get a decent number of runners up to run in Namosi. So that's kind of where the idea came from. And then you kindly connected me with Mrs. Bolatawa from the Namosi Secondary School, and also the club. So Nolene, who's our club manager, went to present officially to the Tui Namosi, and so liaised with the provincial office and the district officer up there to seek, permission to hold the event in Namosi. And then it was just a really great collaboration between lots of the secondary school in particular and the community, but then also Namosi Eco-Retreat, which is where the race finished. So it was a pretty tough race. Anybody that ran the full marathon will tell you that it was a pretty brutal 42 kilometers. So most people ran the 10K, and what was really great to see was, so that started in Namosi Secondary School and finished in Namosi Eco-Retreat, which is next to Navunikabi Village. And obviously, because we were working with the school, we wanted to encourage as many of the older students who were running to participate, and they did so well. Like, so many of them placed, in the top 3. So after that, we then had a number of weeks where we were supporting Namosi secondary school students to come down to Suva for the Athletics Fiji events, which is another, for rural communities. For me, most communities in the interior have natural long distance runners. Anybody who's grown up in the interior is naturally going to be good at endurance and distance events. But so many people face challenges in being able to come down to, to compete in Suva. And because a lot of the events that Athletics Fiji hold are either in Lautoko or in Suva, and you need to be competing regularly to be, selected for things like the Pacific Games or other regional and national competitions, there are lots of barriers to people in rural areas in doing that. So we had a program last year of bringing students down, and we've also got managed to secure some funding from the government of Australia to do the same thing again next year in the lead up to the Coca-Cola Games. So that should be really exciting to support some of the more serious athletes. And thank you so much to your support. You were also really incredibly supportive of getting people to fund shoes and all sorts of other things last year to support those runners. But it was just it was great to see so many people. What surprised us, because it is only maybe an hour and a half drive up to Namosi Village from Suva, but so many people from Suva had never been, and I guess I knew that was an issue, but I didn't really realize how much of an issue that was in terms of people that just hadn't even, hadn't done the drive, because the marathon course, we went inland from the Sawani side and then up that road. And so that drive, that loop that goes through the Namosi Highlands is such a beautiful drive. But I was just really surprised that all these people that had four-wheel drives that had never kind of ventured inland.
Wow, it was just so beautiful to see the pictures, of all
the scenery is just amazing.
The scenery, and even the runners, with different cultural background. It was just so heartwarming, to see the different age groups, the different genders, the different ethnic background of the runners. And some who are older in age and the younger ones. Yeah, we were just cheering, remotely from here and sharing all the photos to everybody. And there was so many support coming from women. There's a couple of women from the US, Fijian women. There was one in particular who actually cried, when she saw the photo, because she was also a long distance runner, and she saw the picture of Christopher Tikolutu. And when she saw Christopher running bare feet, it reminded her of her own childhood, and she became the champion of promoting it. So we ended up having supporters that were connecting in from different parts of the world. And so we just, some of them are listening in too, because they saw the promo going up that we'll be talking about the Namosi Marathon. So to everybody that helped and contributed to the shoes for the Namosi secondary school runners, from Marita and I and the team in the Suva Marathon team, vakalevu for all your financial contribution, because all the money that you sent went to the school, and then it also went straight to the shoe shop, the company in Suva, through, I think, is it Malam, the lady that is in charge?
Nolene, yes.
Yes.
Sports World, she organized it through Sports
World, yes. So that was really, really nice. Just to see the faces of the young ones smiling, to see, a new pair of shoes, and just for them being there, it's a big deal. Yeah, big deal. As you said, there's a lot of obstacles that they have on a daily basis. So Marita,
huge
from all of us,
Vinaka vakalevu. Huge Vinaka level to everybody that supported that. And we were intending to do it again this year in July. But unfortunately, because of COVID, we had to postpone it. But don't worry, it will be back again 2022.
in 2022. Yay! So for those of you listening in and you wanted to contribute last year and you didn't, don't worry, hold on to your purse strings. We'll need it for next year, 2022. And of course, we saw Namosi did so well at the games, right? When they ended up playing in one of the the big tournament that you organized? That was a lead
I
up.
think it was in one of the athletics, one of the athletics Fiji events in the build up. They've got the support structure. There's some really good enthusiastic teachers and coaches that are out there who want to help, and want to support the students to get the most out of their potential. But it is challenging because it's a lot of things are in Fiji, it's a bit Suva-centric at times. So it's doing what we can to try and make sure that that Suva supports the rest of the country with some of this. And I think that was one of the great things about the event, is that it made a lot of people who participated also reflect on the fact that why is it that I haven't been up to Namosi before, or so Danny at Namosi Eco-Retreat, who's from Navunikabi Village, he's organizing an event next month, which is an adventure race event. And that's kind of a little bit partly based on part of the course that was used for Eco Challenge. So we're part of a collective, the Duvata Sustainable Tourism Collective, and a number of us were involved in supporting the logistics for Eco Challenge. So part of that course that was used for Eco Challenge will be used for an introductory, it's not anywhere near as extreme as Eco Challenge, but an introductory adventure race from the 12th to the 14th of November. So that'll be really great to get all the people who have been kind of locked up in Suva for the last 5 months. They're really itching to get out and explore again. So that'll be hopefully a really great event.
And again, as you mentioned, acknowledging Namosi Eco-Retreat. I know Dan and Jackie are listening in. So vakalevu, Ndaku, Dan and Jackie, for the work that you do in Namosi, and promoting Namosi not only within Fiji but globally. And it's just lovely to see how Namosi is being portrayed through colorful photographs, and it's just simple things. That's something that we really like to see. The milimbili and the going over to the bush to pull the ndalo, just very simple things. But for visitors, it means a lot to them.
And it's, I think what's really interesting about Namosi Eco-Retreat, and Danny and Jackie, if you're listening, I hope you don't mind me sharing some of this, but a lot of the guests are from Fiji. A lot of their guests are urban Fijians who may also not have, similar to any external guests to Fiji, may also not have built a bilibili or have uprooted dalo and cooked it for their dinner. So I think there's a huge educational, when tourism's done well, there's a huge educational component to tourism, and there's a huge opportunity, again, when done well, because this is not always the case, to promote traditional knowledge and culture, to help keep it alive. In our case and in Namosi Eco-Retreat's case, the skills around construction of bore, valevakaviti, are being lost. And so with Numbutautau, one of the places for guests to stay is a valevakaviti that was constructed specifically for guests, and it's one of the few places along with Namosi Eco-Retreat where you can stay in a traditional bore, and that's the whole solavaki that goes into constructing them, and kind of the traditional knowledge that's shared from the older generation to the younger generation has been a really important part of the tourism work that the Duvata Sustainable Tourism Collective is doing, but could be a bigger part of the way that tourism is done, in Fiji in general. And that's, as the Duvata Sustainable Tourism Collective, that's what we're really trying to advocate for, is to not see tourism as this part of the economy that sits somehow separate to who we are and what our values are, but to really think about how tourism can work better for Fiji, and for Fijians, and not just have it about, I think often the tourism sector is kind of seen as as a revenue and as also for the government as a tax base, which is an incredibly important tax base and funds schools and hospitals and many of the other services that are accessible to everybody. But the way in which tourism is designed and the opportunities that are there for Fijians to develop their own tourism experiences, own their own tourism businesses, promote their own culture and traditional knowledge and language and all of the rest of it through tourism, I think is an area that we're still lagging behind a little bit compared to, say, Vanuatu and Samoa, who have quite strong programs to support community-based tourism. The Samoan Fales and Vanuatu bungalows, there's a bit more support through the kind of policy and government system to be able to promote that kind of tourism. So I think hopefully working in partnership with many other tourism operators that also feel like us, we can slowly try and chip away at that one.
That's amazing. I like the fact that you mentioned that there are a lot of local Fijians, as you said, the urban Fijians who are taking advantage of these amazing packages that Namosi Eco-Retreat and also through your support, Talanoa tracks. It's just, wonderful to see the involvement of the local people and, that they're giving back. Giving back to the local villages, and the local villages are, part of it as well. So vakalevu. The other one too that I want to highlight too are the young ones that are participating from the Namosi Secondary School team. The opportunity, as you said, for them to look at the future, to be involved in the Pacific Games, so they can think outside the box. And I know that one of my nieces, Salome, who's a really good runner, she got a couple of gold medals from the last games. So she set her dream, her vision to that. And it's just so nice to see that a little girl, who grew up in Namosi now has her dream, set for that. And for her to participate for, the marathon and to do this kind of things, the exposure that you're all bringing in is really, really remarkable and need to be acknowledged. Yeah. Now, there are some people who are interested to know about the Namosi or the adventure race that is coming up in November 12 to 14. What should they do if they want to participate, or how do they get involved?
So they should get in touch with Danny at Namosi Eco-Retreat through their Facebook page or their website. I'm pretty sure that the event in November is already full, but there are some teams that have spaces. So there are some teams, because it's a team of 4 people with 1 support. So I think there are some teams that still have some spare spaces. But they're going to put it on again fairly soon afterwards. So I think in January or February next year, they'll run exactly the same event again, because we were also, I guess, a little bit surprised at, how popular it was, because it was postponed from April. So there was some people who already booked in from them, but there's lots of people who want to get out and do these kind of things. So get in touch with the Namosi Eco-Retreat. They're leading the event, and it's going to be really interesting. But if you don't want to participate in the event, we're helping a little bit with the medical support through the volunteer first responders. They're an amazing group of medics and first responders that are involved normally in pre-hospital emergency care, and they've been really heavily involved in the COVID response. So we have plenty of space for volunteers if you want to help. So if you want to be on a checkpoint, or if you want to help with, doing any of the transportation, then just get in touch with Danny and let him know that you're happy to help volunteer and cheer people on.
Wow, that is amazing. So where will be the starting point? The ending will be at Namosi Eco-Retreat. So where will it begin, Marita?
So it will start at Rivers Fiji are the other operator who are partnering on the event. Namosi Eco-Retreat are leading it, but the Upper Navua river, that section of the river that they usually use with Rivers Fiji will be used as the first section. So people will camp the night before at the put-in point for the rafts, which is near Nabukelevu Village, and then they'll come down to close to Namuamua and then head up to Navunikabi. So it's a raft and then a hike, or a raft and a run if you're fit, a raft and a hike if you're not up for the 10K run after the raft.
Wow, so it's a raft and a run. Wow, that is nice. Yeah, so there you go. For those of you listening in, if you're interested to know more about it, go to the Namosi Eco-Retreat Facebook page and like their page if you haven't done so, and follow what they have prepared there for this year's one for November. And as Marita said, there may be another one coming up in January in 2022. So that is amazing. See, so yeah, maybe a lot of Namosi gang that are listening in, Chine Sisi, Chine Melton, maybe the Namosi women, we need to have a team, and we have to run from Namoamua. So that's a nice challenge. So this is amazing, lovely, lovely. Vakalevu, Marita, for joining me on this Talanoa session. So maybe at this time, is there anything else you want to share, or other people that you may want to acknowledge, particularly for the amazing support they've given to your team in Suva and through Talanoa treks, as well as the Namosi Marathon?
Oh, I think way too many people to acknowledge, because I might forget somebody. But I think mainly, obviously, the people of Namosi who helped with the event, and Namosi Secondary School in particular. We had lots of sponsors last year, and people who are also willing to sponsor for this year. So I don't want to name them all because I will forget somebody and then it'll be really embarrassing. But thank you very much to all of the sponsors and the supporters. There's the club, obviously the Super Marathon Club, and all of the people that are behind the scenes with those events, and all of the partners in the Duvata Sustainable Tourism Collective. So I think for many of us in tourism, obviously it's been a really, really tough 18 months, and our little bubble of the Sustainable Tourism Collective, we're called the Duvata Sustainable Tourism Collective, and it really has felt as though everybody has been there for each other, this year. So yeah, really thankful to all of the members, and then obviously all of the support that we've had from the provincial offices, from the district offices, the communities that we work in partnership with, people like yourself who are always out promoting, and I think that's one of the really special things about the Fijian diaspora. I mean, if you look at the level of remittances over the last year, that has been, I think, just demonstration yet again of the importance of family, of community, in getting people through what has been a really, really tough, and we're not out of the woods yet by any stretch of the imagination, but getting people through a really, really tough period. So there's so many different people to thank, but I also wanted to thank everybody for listening tonight. I hope it's been interesting. I always feel really embarrassed coming on like things like this, as somebody from Suva and originally from the UK. So Manakwa, really, really, really appreciate Vakalevu the invite tonight.
Marita. Yeah, no, we were just so excited to have you join us on this Namosi month, because we know the support you have given to the Namosi Eco-Retreat and other events around Namosi, and I know you have the other villages up in Numbutautau, and those who are also listening in from the other places. I've written down Savatu, Navatusila, Nangatangata, Numbutautau, all those beautiful places in the interior of Vitilevu. Keo ni wararong chukumai vinaka Vakalevu na Vitokoni ke na Wasota, ke na raka wako kaua e na nonra toko ni tiko ira na bulangi e rangando ngande mai biti siang walangani ira na bulangi rangole mai balangi bulangi talanga ira na nonda e ratiko na bibonua wakababalangi vinaka vakalevu sara. So Marita, thank you so much and all the best for your work in Talanoa Tracks and Talanoa Consulting. Keep up the wonderful work and also say bula to all the members of your collective. I'm going to read it again. Duvata Sustainable Tourism Collective. Is that the right way? Yes.
That's the right way.
Yay, vinaka vakalevu. So all the very best for the upcoming Duvata or adventure race. We will be watching online. And if you need any support, just let me know.
Nakakalevu, Tarisi.
Okay.
Really appreciate the invite.
Nakakalevu. Mada Marita.
Manakwa, mode.
Manakwa. Sa nakakalevu Marita. Mami vinaka vena maramani wele singo. Sama isuletu na nona ngauna kena nona yau wat kena utino maviu ena nonro vito koniti kubera na marama ena ve banua na loma ke vitilevu. Wili kena be bono sa wili kotenyo ya talindina na be vukero bakador tiko na nonra pakitabi na marama ira talanga na turanga na be bakasarsartaki na mer tour guide tiko talanga ira marama ira me bulida na bakasanga kena bakarutaki na yaya ni ipakadengu bera na bulan ira ngole mai na mbure na nonra buno mer laki modikina tali ninda reda nira baka nga taksarangan na nonra yau ira bulan bango me yang alistali kibira na wekanda era tu na be korkor ona wili kataliani na be bunua era buta me yao o Marita wa go nona lakuma me ia tombal sar ko to meni ibi la talanga la bena me abono me tabiuni batilamu na dolo ke vitilevu sa batu na batu sila na ngata-ngata ke numbuto tao. Nakapakalevu sar be na matinitikina me numbuto tao na vito koni verona beauty ni Talanoa Tracks ke na Talanoa Consulting. Nakapakalevu sar na siya matikumay Rosa Valevatu, nakapakalevu sar na siya matikumay Tinay Melton, nakapakalevu vikim na siya matikumay Malaysia buli binakanuguweka makanoa iyo vambul sar chikani pakalevu totoka na vito koni and non rota kavako Marita Manley ke na watina o Maviu. Tababi ni pinaka na Talanoa Tracks ke na Talanoa Consulting and na non rodo vito koni tiko na non rakawitaki na taukiningele ke ira na taukena tuna bebo no rere binaka na lomondolo ke vitilevu. Na kabinaka ya ni rawaya longangata ke na taukiningele meradidi bakasaranga na non ra bisinisi ena buku ni sarpano ia. Bebo kanisa songo chukungo na be barara ni wanga buka era simber ni levu na babalanya rea ya da masula ka chiku ni ndolo ngon leka go sana ndola tali mer na ngole no ira na bulanya ngai biti ke ira talanga na bulanya mena bese bora daka bakalevu kalar sale leawa mai Hamilton daka balib sarana semati kumai pabini binaka tiko ya ni na bitu ko ni na bital nongo ke ira ke na ngoni buli ni Namosi Secondary School. Abakambole tiko bena marama principal milika mbole tao na mabingara vitiko na Namosi Secondary School ke na nona loma soli ba siberto na PTA kerto na committee ni koribuli mera bakitabi na ngone buli en Namosi marathon en baksawati ya na bula mengo na ndo tiko na vito jiji na bakadori tiko na adventure race ka tiko bume Nabukelevu ya Namuamua kala ke bakatini sare na Navunikabi. Kaya kau ni bikila na kaya matela lain ninggay ngalinga ena nonroto Facebook page na Namosi Eco-Retreat. Karoti kinrono beauty ni o Den o ndaku Den bate ke Jackie. Eroti bakati ko na business ngo ni sarbanua may Namosi. Sa kwa ngaya sarva ko moda ni bikim ni todo kusara na bakalevu na sema mai ni mataka na bana kaloko na kani na sema tikumikina rona vida na marama mena anti ta kumbao school na marama minista bakadengo mista vakatali Madam Susana Tisawau ke alania ta vakatali na tuanga na Talanoa na bakana numi ni kornibuli ni anti ta kumbao school na signi mataka na bana kaloko na kani na bakalevu au sava ko moda chakayani ando moda me makoi moda Tinay Melton lolom saraba kalevu vale ni moda Tinay Sisi ni moade mata.